Welcome to the iPhoneography podcast. I'm Greg McMillan, and as we record this, it's Monday, January 22nd, the second longest day, the day after the longest day of the year, in the Northern Hemisphere at least. And we are going to talk about not a new technology, but an upgraded or an updated technology that Apple has, but more on that in a minute. First, I want to do just a couple of quick little news items here. And these are not necessarily new, but just wanted to mention them anyway. The first thing is an app update. Halide has released Halide Mark III. Now, this was out in beta for quite a while and went public, I want to say maybe a month ago, roughly. And so I'm just going to read this rather than try to recall from memory here. The Lux team released the long awaited version 3 of the Pro Camera app with some nice UI improvements. Also included to accompany Process Zero are new looks, which are kind of like film simulations, but they weren't designed after specific films, but rather they're a joint collaboration between Lux and a Hollywood colorist named Colin Kelly. Mark III includes better manual controls like shutter and ISO priority, as well as a full manual accessible at the top right from the top right hand corner of the user interface where it says auto unless you've changed your exposure or whatever, but you tap that and the little thing pops down and you can choose one of those modes. Let's see here. And they've also added their own editing suite for raw files. Now, I say for raw files because I tried to do it with some JPEGs and some hikes today and it wouldn't work, but a raw file, whether it's a Bayer raw or a Pro raw, it seemed to work fine. And you have a lot more control over the final output of the image. So you've got, you can actually control the white balance by color temperature and, things like that. It even has what resembles the brilliance control in the Photos app. So that's kind of cool. So if you have Halide and you haven't updated it to Mark III, go ahead and do that. It's pretty cool. I think it's a little more user friendly than it was before. So that's interesting. And then the other thing I wanted to mention was an app release. There's a new app for Sandmark. So Sandmark is a company that make lenses and things like that for the iPhone ecosystem. And so they've released a new free camera app designed to not only accompany their lenses, but they tout it as an app for pro and casual users. Within the app is a lens selector that will add the lens type to the metadata of the image. It has manual controls and a gallery where you can see that lens information in the data. Now, that lens information shows up within the app in the metadata, but it doesn't show up in like when you open up a photo in Photos and you swipe up in the photo to see the metadata, it's not there. So it looks like it's just proprietary to the Sandmark camera app itself. And it's got the usual suspects. It's got all the, manual controls and all that stuff, but they've made it their own in their own design and whatnot. So it's a free app. And even if you don't have the lenses, it might be worth a look if you're looking to, venture into another camera app of your choice. So that's all I had for kind of news items. Want to give a shout out to my cousin Corey, who's tuning in from Niagara Falls. So, hey, Corey, good to see you here. Now, we will bring in a couple of guys here that you might be familiar with. We'll bring them all in. We've got Dave and Dwight, and we've got Jeff Donald from Florida. Hey, Jeff.
Hey, how's everybody?
All
And
right, Jeff. Good to see you.
Oh, thanks. Good to be here.
yeah, so we got Jeff on because he's going to know a little more about what our topic is than we are. Probably the three of us combined. So what we're going to talk about is Raw 9. So on the last show, we called it Flub DC because it's WWDC, and we thought it was I thought I'll speak for myself. I don't want to throw anybody else under the bus. I thought it was a bit of a flub because we didn't really get to see a lot of new features that might be coming out in iOS 27. Because, I guess we heard rumors about this and that, things from the camera app and whatnot. They didn't really show much as far as that stuff goes. However, if you watched the some of the presentations and Q&A sessions and whatnot on the Apple developer YouTube channel, some interesting things came up. And one of them was the thing called RAW 9. Now, this is the ninth version of this, and Apple makes their raw processing, you know, it does certain things, and we'll dive into that a little more. And then this is the best of my understanding. And what they've done is they've improved it since RAW 8. And it's been how many years, Jeff, since RAW 8? About 8 years, hasn't it?
Yeah, it was like 2017, I think, something like
Yeah.
that. 2018 was the last time the core image was updated, so that's a long time.
Yeah, yeah. And when I'm gonna provide some links in the show notes to an article, I think it was on Petapixel that talked about this, and you'll be able to see some old versions of RAW, like RAW 8 basically, and then the RAW 9 and the difference between the 2. And then there's gonna be a video from the Apple developer channel where this gentleman talks about RAW 9 and, how it's going to affect our workflow. And it's not, not to be mistaken for a capture thing. It's the way a raw image is displayed on Apple devices, because you can take a raw image from 15 years ago and from a non-iPhone, like from a Canon or a Nikon camera, and it's going to display differently with RAW 9 than it would with RAW 8, say. So, it's why are we talking about this on an iPhoneography podcast? Because I think it's going to be pretty relevant in processing these images once this all comes to fruition in iOS 27, macOS 27, iPadOS, and I don't know if visionOS would have anything in it, but anyway,
It Yeah,
will it be in
because it's
visionOS
a
too?
capture, because you can capture with vision, it would be applicable there.
Okay, cool. All right. So, Jeff, we're gonna let you take the lead on this and,
Okay,
maybe just
so
kinda get people up to speed on just what this is all about.
yeah, it's a process version is kinda the foundation for a number of things when the raw file is demosaicked. So basically, you've got this raw data, but you can't just view the raw data on a screen. It's got to be what's called demosaicked. And it's one of the layers in that process. And it's a big leap forward on what Apple's doing. And Dwight and I, we just had a slight, 30-second sort of conversation, but I think this is a big breakthrough for Apple. I think they've probably spent a lot of money over the last few years, certainly not all 8 years, but the last year or 2, I think they've looked at their image processing and decided that they need to up their game. So, it's an API that a developer can opt into. So somebody like Adobe is gonna use their own raw engine to process things. They'll dissect this probably to see what Apple's doing, but software's copyrighted, blah, blah, blah. But I'm sure they're gonna be curious, and so will some of the other companies, particularly DxO. They have their new Deep Fusion or something they're calling it, which is touted as being perhaps the best noise reduction in the industry. So they've all got different approaches, and Apple, with their A series chips and M series chips, the A chips in the phones and the M's in the iPads and Macs and Mac Minis and Studios, they're going to be able to take advantage of this. But the default will basically still be Core 8, and the developer can add 2 lines of code to their existing software, and it'll now do RAW 9. It's a very simple thing for developers
I
to
find that
implement,
just mind-boggling that all it takes is 2 lines of code to
just
make
to
a
enable
difference
it.
here.
Yep, and that's going to, the best thing is to look at the side-by-side pictures to a degree to see what they've done, but what it is, it's just I don't wanna call it revolutionary, but it is a major jump forward in noise reduction for Apple, and it's really gonna put them up in the same category as Adobe and DxO and their Deep Fusion or whatever they're calling it. So that's kinda the part of it that's most exciting,
Now,
and it's
just before you go any further, Jeff,
yeah.
for anybody that didn't catch you on the last time you were on, just in a sentence, just let them know what your experience is with Apple,
Oh,
just so that
okay.
they know who's talking here.
Yeah. I worked for Apple for a few years in several capacities as a store manager in Tampa and some other things. I've been a software developer, not for Apple, but work on my own since about 2010 or so. So the last 15, 16 years. So I know a little of this. I don't write any big time apps, but I just keep my fingers in it, so to speak, so I can understand this stuff. My sort of real passion, like the three of you, is photography. So, but I have some mental illness that I like to dig into this little stuff and understand the technology and understand where this stuff is going and what it means so that we can take the best advantage of it. We can share it with our audiences or group members, whatever we're involved in. So that's kind of my background, my gist in things. But I still have a number of connections with Apple, not that they share any super secret stuff. I'm not getting anybody fired. This is all stuff that's in the public documentation. There's the developer app, and anybody can get access to it. You can get it on YouTube, on Apple's developer channel on YouTube, or you can download the developer app from the App Store and they're all there. So the app just loads on your iPad or iPhone, and you can watch the videos and, do whatever you wanna do. There's a lot of cool stuff in the app.
Yeah. I watched a very interesting video about the Apple camera, and the one thing that stood out in my mind, and there was a panel of about 4 or 5 Apple technicians or developers.
Engineers, maybe
Engineers
developers.
engineers is the best word, yeah. For different parts of the whole thing, and one guy said that his wish list was to see a pro features in the Apple camera. Now, that's not to say it's coming, and he fully disclosed that. He says, "I mean, I don't know if it's ever gonna happen," but he says, "If I had a wish, that would be it," type of thing. So that's the kind of things that you can see and hear and learn on the Apple Developer YouTube channel or in the app. Um,
Well, and yeah, that kinda hit the news 6, 8 weeks ago that was publicly announced by the gentleman that owns now it was a partnership, but they split up, that owns Halide, the app you were just
oh,
talking
yeah.
about.
Yep.
And last fall, evidently, Apple made an offer to purchase it, which is Apple's kinda, you know, "Hey, why don't we just buy it? We don't have to develop it." But I think his name's Ben. He
Yeah,
Ben
turned him
Ben
Bernofsky.
Sadowski, yeah.
yeah, turned him down.
Yep.
So but that kinda shows you where Apple is going. So they may have gone, "Well, we just will do it in-house." So I fully think within the next cycle, either in September of '26 or '27, uh, excuse me, my allergies kicking in, we will see a pro app from Apple, whether they buy one or they develop their own. I think that's coming, and I also think I doubt it'll be called Aperture 4, but I think Pixelmator Pro is gonna morph into something that is more something similar to what Aperture was, if any of you were Aperture users. It was kind of a direct competitor to Lightroom, and actually, it
Yeah.
beat Lightroom to the market back in 2005, 2006. So,
Yeah. I
Interesting.
yeah.
used it. I used it and I missed it when it went away. But the guys that worked on that at Apple became gentleman coders and
Yep,
brought out raw power,
yep,
which is now Nitro, the
yep,
newest iteration. So, I mean, it's kinda still there, but I mean, but it's, raw power is not
yeah,
Aperture.
Yeah.
but
Um,
but that's one of the apps, Nitro, that'll be able to benefit from Core 9. Ron, all they have to do is add the little bit of code, and they can either just it'll be 9, or they can make it switchable, basically, that the user can go, "Okay, here's 8, here's 9. Ooh, I like 9," and
yeah,
run with it. That's
It'd be
one of the
interesting to
apps.
yeah, it'd be interesting to understand kind of what the usage looks like on third-party camera apps relative to, just the native app. I'm sure it's, I'm sure most people use the native app, but it'd be nice to understand, what the third-party camera app marketplace, as far as share goes.
Oh, yeah.
Apple must know that there's something there,
Oh, sure,
obviously
because oh,
to
yeah.
pursue Halide. That
Yeah,
would be
I
interesting to know.
mean, it's confidential, but Apple knows what sells. They have to pay the
Yep.
developer.
Yeah.
So,
And they
they'll
have
s
to take their cut, of course.
well, there is that.
yeah.
Unless you're in Europe and then you have the Alt App Store, but now all the Alt App stores are closing and,
Just
but
like
we
Vegas, they have to
digress.
keep their lights on, right?
Yeah,
I wonder
but
though if people I'm sorry, for let's say people who let's say you take the photo, you do it in RAW, it looks a certain way on your screen using a Mac or an iPhone or an iPad. But let's say someone on a Windows machine is just viewing it. So
mhm,
you know, they're not using an Adobe device or Adobe
right.
software to view. I wonder if it's going to look that much worse because the way Windows takes that raw data and then shows it out there, or is it when you take a raw file and you're putting it on a social media, which we know they mess up the quality, or you put it on somewhere like Glass or somewhere like that, does it then convert it to JPEG where it's kind of frozen?
Well, it will be it'll be in a standard format. So it's the processing. So it's going to take your raw data, basically a DNG, and so you captured it. So every capture is raw. Now, depending on what pipeline, are you going to JPEG, DNG, or if you're Dwight, the raw, bare raw, what's going on? And so, but the finished product will be one of those, and it'll have the denoising applied to it. So it really isn't going to matter. If you go to view it on PC, it's just going to be a JPEG that conforms to the JPEG standard. And so you open it up on Windows and it's just a JPEG, but the noise that would have previously been there is now effectively detail with less to perhaps no artifacts, depending on the ISO and that kind of thing. So that's where it's going to, really shine, is that it's still your finished format, HEIF, HIF or HEIF or whatever, or a JPEG, or now even the bare raw may get some denoising. Everybody thinks raw data is raw data, but look at the Sony sensors and, here's a $5,000 Sony, blah, blah, blah. Well, Sony does noise reduction on the chip. So it can be whatever raw you want to call it, but it is no longer really the data off the sensor. Sony's hardware has demosaicked it and, well, and applied noise reduction to that image, even though when you open it up, it still says whatever Sony's RAW format is. It got done on the chip. Nikon does it too. Nikon sensors apply noise reduction on the sensor. So,
Interesting.
Hmm.
yeah, raw data is not really raw much
Yeah,
anymore.
no, sorry, Jeff.
No, that's okay. I was just gonna say Canon was kind of the last holdout, but my understanding is even Canon has now jumped on the, "We've gotta do some of this on the chip to stay relevant."
Yeah. Well,
Hmm.
I was going to say in the Apple video, they did mention how Fuji's sensor is just different. Didn't say how, just different. So it's like, well, even the weird stuff we can handle versus the more standard how other cameras do it. And honestly, I like the fact that there's like what 900 different camera raw setups built in.
Yeah. Yeah, so it's gonna hit the ground running.
Yeah.
It's like 800, 900, something in that range of cameras that it's already compatible with. So what that means is, so I've got iPhone photos dating back to 2007 when I was working for Apple and I got the very first iPhone. Now those weren't DNG RAWs, but those I think can still be passed through that and improved. But even if the JPEGs can't, Apple implemented Pro RAW, I think, on iPhone 12 Pros and Pro Maxes.
Yep.
So at
Hmm.
least going back to the 12s, Pros, you would be able to reprocess those pictures and because it's still a DNG if you didn't throw it out. So you could run that DNG back through it and it would benefit from the new noise reduction and you'd have pictures you took 6, 7 years ago now getting new life into them.
But even as far back as the 6S, when they brought in, like, they gave them bare raw functionality
Yep,
or capability.
yep. They
Um,
would all be
They're
fully
hard.
capable.
Okay, I'm gonna ask a really silly question because Greg, in your opening statement, what I heard was that it changes how it looks on the screen. I'm assuming that it's changing the file and it's gonna print differently than the version RAW 8 would.
Well,
uh,
when you go
Go
to
ahead, Jeff.
print, when you go to print, it's still gonna be a TIFF or a JPEG, depending what your printer will accept and or if you're sending it out, what the printer wants. So, it's just gonna have less noise.
Okay, so that's gonna come in. I mean, that the processing is gonna be there when you print it under.
Yep,
No, yeah, okay.
yeah, and so, in theory, the screen image will look better. When you go to edit it, when you open it up in Photos or Pixelmator Pro or Nitro or any of the other half a dozen that uses Apple's sort of pipeline for their raw editors. They'll all be able to take advantage of it, and the output, whether it's JPEG or TIFF or what have you, will be higher quality. It can benefit everybody.
Now,
Yeah.
we just I want to and tell me if you don't know. It's like, do you have to do anything to get these reprocessed, or just opening them up in the Photos app reprocesses them?
Well, the software, whether it's no I mean, I can't say for certain, but
Right.
what the videos said was it could be, they're gonna try to keep it simplified. They're not gonna give you 10 controls to manipulate the noise reduction. It could be as simple as 1 or 2 sliders. And so that makes me think it's going to be more in line if you've looked at Lightroom's noise reduction. You have like amount, radius, and there's one other category. So you got 1 or 2 couple of sliders and that's it. Detail, I think, might be the other one. So you just kinda, move a slider, "Hey, that looks good to me," but because it's raw data, you would be able to process it again and again and again. So as your skills improved, you go, "Boy, I can't believe I processed files like that 6 months ago, let me fix them. It's gonna give you a slider to do something. We just don't know what.
Yeah, Dave, that's a good question because if I'm not mistaken, that's something that we have to enable in our settings to be able to have the raw 9 feature, I believe.
Yes.
Okay, then I guess the question is, at that point, does everything is everything now affected with that, or do you have to do something to each photo to turn it in, give it that capability, or does each photo need to be re-edited or, manipulated with those 2
It's
sliders or something?
my understanding is Yeah, my understanding is it's to get the maximum benefit, you're gonna have to open up the DNG.
Yeah.
So, at some point, if you've turned it into a TIFF or a JPEG, maybe to print or to post on social media, as long as you still have that DNG, you just need to open that up again, and you can take advantage of the better noise reduction.
Mhm.
And but what's already been processed is done. I don't My understanding is opening up a JPEG, it's just gonna open the JPEG. That's kinda cooked in. It would be like trying to undo a brownie that's got walnuts in it and pluck the walnuts out. That isn't
Yeah,
gonna work.
yeah. I wonder if the Apple's Photos app will still let you revert to original after doing something like that. It should.
Yeah, yeah,
Mhm.
because hidden away in the structure, you can go and find your originals unless you went digging for the originals and decided to throw them out. Apple keeps those, it keeps them hidden. And on an iPad or an iPhone, the user really can't get to them. You can plug them into a PC and you can poke around the file structure, but Apple doesn't allow any apps that on the App Store or whatever. But on a PC, you can poke around and you can probably find the raw files and do
Yeah.
dumb things with them.
Yeah, I'm gonna remain skeptical only from the fact that I can only use as a baseline the current, sharpening and noise reduction that's applied on the current raw photo
Yeah.
structure that we have. And, right now for me, the midtones get muddy on Pro Raws and the shadows get crushed by the sharpening. So right now, I'd still like to be able to have control of that tone mapping if I could. Not sure how that's gonna work, but I am gonna approach it, from a positive standpoint, and look forward to what these changes are. Maybe they're more natural. Maybe, maybe our shadows aren't gonna be crushed. Maybe my midtones won't look like, a finger painting or something like that. But
Yeah. And now this is just me talking, but I think all four of us would agree that Apple gets and has gotten a lot of flack over the last few years, and maybe even longer than a few, that their images look overprocessed. And if you think Apple's look overprocessed, look at some of the Google Pixel stuff. Boy, some of their stuff, especially their AI stuff, is just, to me, it's just terrible. But that's Google. I don't care
anybody
about
can get a good moon photo is what you're saying.
Yeah, their phones hallucinate a lot.
Yeah,
Yeah, they're on LSD or something, I think.
yeah.
That's their new software, by the way. The but I think what Apple currently does is they have to exercise a lot of noise reduction, and that's because 'cause they're small sensors, et cetera. And the lenses, I mean, the telephoto on the 17 Pros, Pro Maxes, it's a 2.8, and the wide angle, the 13 millimeter half X, that's I think 2 point f2.2. You're about f8 on the 24 millimeter. The telephoto is an issue. You're losing a lot of light, and so I think this is Apple realizing that they've got to do several things. And one of them is up the game on the processing. They've got to get serious about noise reduction, And in doing so, you'd think, well, isn't that processing? Well, it is. But the goal is to reduce the noise so the natural sharpness that's there in a 48 megapixel sensor can really shine. And so it's going to end up giving you a better, sharper, more natural raw file. You can always, in whatever your software is, soften it a little bit, but it's not gonna have that unnatural sharpness, that crunchiness to it that is really, what people look at when they start to pixel peep. It's like, what are all these funny textures and odd details and things? I think that'll be homogenized. It'll be made smoother, more consistent with what it really looks like. The images that really show it to me, if you get a chance, go through the notes. I threw a couple links in. There's one on DP Review and the one in the Apple, and then Petapixel. They all used, I think, the same images from Apple. There's one of a box of crayons
Mhm.
shot with, I think it's an older Canon, a 5D Mark III, at like ISO 52,000.
Yeah, with the color noise. Yeah.
Color noise, luminance noise. You can't even tell what color the crayons are because there's so
Mhm.
much chroma noise. And then you look at same ISO, 52,000 or something, and they pass it through the Core 9 RAW, and wow, it looks like more like a box of crayons. And
And
to me,
I did notice that it brought out the natural colors of the
yeah,
crayons. Yeah.
yeah. Some of them where the colors were very similar. There's like one shade of orange and another shade of orange right behind it. In the noisy picture, you couldn't tell which orange was gonna be what. Were they the same color orange? Were they different? There was just so much chroma noise. And then they ran it through the new Core 9, and wow, it was actually discerning the differences in colors. The other one that stood out was fairly low ISO. I think it was 6,000 or so, and it might have been on a Fuji XT5, which is a current body. And those have these, instead of their hexagonal pixels. So they all fit in this weird mosaic. And I think rather than RGB, it's like RGB, and then there's a fourth color that they add. And Sony does the same thing. They have like aqua or something they add in. Fuji does something similar, but they're not like round or well, pixels, photo sites, but the actual pixels are rectangular, square, whatever. Theirs are hexagonal, and it's a weird mosaic that they make. And so that was the yarn. There was all the yarn, and you looked at it at about ISO 6,000, and you couldn't see the detail in the yarn. You couldn't see where the twist was and stuff. And they ran it through the Core 9 RAW, and boom, there's you can see every strand of yarn. And if you even just zoomed in a little bit on the screen, it's like tremendous detail that was there.
And
And
it
that's
wasn't
got
like deep fusion, it was,
no,
like, clear, like,
Mhm.
it wasn't
yeah,
overcooked at all.
no,
It'll
no,
be
So
interesting to
that
'cause I always sharpen last,
yeah,
especially on
yeah,
a bare raw file, I always sharpen last. Noise reduction first, and then I do my editing, and then, I'll bring textures out where appropriate in my photo. It'll be interesting to kinda understand that pipeline of how they apply the noise reduction and the sharpening and how they work that. Because if they're sharpening first and then denoising it, it would look different if it was opposite.
yeah.
so
I
this whole thing brings a question to my mind. W Would this not improve the appearance of a JPEG or a hike
sure,
taken in that process? Like,
sure,
because it all starts with a raw image, right? And
bingo.
then
Yep.
right when it becomes a when the output is instantly made into a JPEG or a hike, which would which would really work for live photos, everything. I think the image quality at capture is going to be better.
Yes. Yep.
For me in theory, but yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, I think the other thing that, why improve all this processing? There's criticism in the market, but iPhone 17 Pros, Pro Maxes, Apple still can't keep them in stock. I mean, this is a
Right.
hot camera. It's the hottest camera they've had. Now you go on the photo forums and everybody's like, "Oh, it's also overprocessed, blah, 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 blah." Well, the average person, Joe on the street who is snapping away, does seem to like that look, you know? But I think with, one of the big rumors, and I think it's been repeated long enough and frequently enough, I think we can count at least the 18 Pro Max having a variable aperture on at least one of the lenses,
Mhm.
maybe two.
Mm,
Um, Certainly the main lens is gonna get a variable aperture, and I think the telephoto will as well.
Interesting.
The
Yeah.
wide
yeah, I
angle.
saw that rumor too, and the fact it's gonna be significant it's even gonna be thicker. The
Yep.
bump's going I don't know if the rest of the camera is going to be thicker. The bump's gonna be thicker.
Yes. 'Cause you gotta make room for whatever kinda aperture
Mhm.
Right.
fits in between, and you can't just slide it in. So at least one of the lenses, certainly the main, is gonna get an all-new development. This lens will probably become sharper and possibly faster. We could be looking at an f1.4 lens. And so now noise, by when you start stopping it down, which everybody's gonna wanna play with the new toys, they're gonna take it down to 5.6, the ISO is gonna shoot up 4 or 5 stops, and now you're into high noise. So let's develop some software that really tackles the noise issue, and people are gonna love this variable aperture. And I think that's how the hardware and the software all have to sort of come together here to make this happen.
Yeah. So, another question I have, Jeff, you and
Mhm.
I are on the betas for
Yeah,
iOS 27. Beta 2
yeah.
just came out today. We're on the developer beta. There's no public beta yet.
Nope.
Is RAW 9 in here?
No, I don't think so.
No? Okay.
No.
Is that a
Um,
hardware when the hardware comes out, the new phones? No? No, that wouldn't make
no, it's
sense.
gonna be in the app.
Okay.
I mean, this is hardware. It's a hardware method, but virtually, yeah, I don't know how far back it'll go, but any of the A chips that have a neural engine should be able to run it to some degree. It's the neural engine in the chip structure, the system on a chip SoC, that the neural engine sits there. Now, the other noise reduction software, Adobe's DxO, Topaz Labs, their ultimate thing, whatever they call it now. It used to be denoise, now it's something else. All of them offload that denoising to the graphics, the GPUs, but there's a high overhead there. GPUs use a lot of battery power. They produce a lot of heat, and there's a time lag, and there's a memory issue. The neural engine, because it basically sits right next to the CPU and they all share that unified memory. There's no back and forth. The file doesn't have to go to the GPU, then come back to the CPU. That file sits there in unified memory, and the CPU can get it, and the neural engine can get it. The neural engine is specifically designed for this type of stuff like noise reduction. Noise reduction is a 8-bit, 16-bit process. When you send it over to the GPUs, those are usually 32-bit, 64-bit floating point math, blah, 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 blah. You're kinda, you know, pulling out a sledgehammer to crack a walnut, whereas the neural engine can do it much more efficiently, much faster, much less battery consumption, less heat. So this is a win all the way around for the photographer, for Apple, for the device. It should be a better user experience for everybody, and they should get better results.
Hmm.
And
That's
I'm
the
kind of
bottom line.
wondering because they didn't even show any of the examples of iPhone 17, iPhone 16 Pros. They were all, like you said, Sony, Fuji, other cameras. If they're also trying to push this towards, I don't know if they're losing market for like Mark Sadowski, who, started Tiny Shutter back in the day. He's a wedding photographer.
Right?
So he uses his Fujifilm camera to take the photo, but I wonder if Apple's saying, "Hey, we don't want to lose the processing. We don't want them to go to a Windows device and or anywhere, or we don't want them to use Adobe on Windows and lose, people processing on iPads or on their Macs or
Oh, yeah.
MacBooks."
Yeah.
And they're like, "Hey, you could don't use that. Look what we got for you built into the operating system."
Yeah.
You know, it's
And
interesting. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Jeff.
well, I was gonna say, Dave's whole argument is leading to, well, we're gonna lose the pros. Yeah, they're already using Lightroom. You lost all the pros when you killed Aperture 3. So now we'll have some other thing, but it's gotta be a a competitor to Lightroom. It's gotta have a similar structure. It's gotta have the database organization, keywording, all that thing. Aperture used to have it. They just gotta do it all again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And with this hardware, that's something, and probably a price differential. I mean, it's hard to find anybody that just gushes over Adobe. Who gets all happy and excited to give Adobe some more money?
I
I
do
don't
wonder,
know.
Jeff, when you're talking about the database setup and the keywords and everything,
Yeah,
one thing they were really pushing with the new Apple Intelligence was that was kind of built into the operating system once you index everything. So you
yep,
wouldn't really need to have, your program do all the work. You would just say, use Finder because
yeah,
we already indexed and you can do these amazing, and I don't know how amazing they are in real life, amazing AI searches where you could say, oh, find the photos from
yep,
last April that I took at this particular place with people with red dresses type thing.
yeah,
And it'll so there's not really a need to say we're going to recreate that like Adobe has their own thing. You're saying, you know what? It's built into the operating system.
yep.
So once you index it, we have amazing search. So you don't even have to worry about having separate databases.
Yeah, there's just gotta be some pro viewing
Yeah.
area. You've gotta have, like, a light box where, okay, I wanna sort through 25 pictures of giraffes that I took in the zoo.
Hmm.
Alright, so it pulls up 25 giraffe pictures. So you got them on your screen, and you gotta be able to sort, "Well, that one's got its back to me. This one's in funny shadows. This one's" so
Hmm.
they've gotta have a professional layout and sorting structure so that you can, be efficient and find that. But yeah, Apple Intelligence, the keywording aspect of it's effectively disappearing. You just ask what you want, and it's gonna pull it up.
You know, there's another elephant in the room here. I saw a video, I don't know if a week ago or 2 weeks ago, where the noise features of certain programs, and I think it was, I'm not gonna mention them, but, we have a top 4 or so, including Topaz. I will
Yeah,
mention Topaz. Went up against a, an AI engine where the AI engine was asked to denoise, the photo. I'm not sure what the exact prompt was, but it
yeah,
beat them all.
yeah.
It absolutely beat them all.
Well, see, that's gonna be the subscription model.
Mhm.
So, that's where all these other companies, they're pretty much, if you wanna do that, that file's gotta go up to our big servers,
Mhm.
and we
Mhm.
do this high-end AI denoising, and we send it back down to you. And you can buy 200 photos a month, and we'll only charge you 20 bucks. You know? And
Yeah.
so pretty soon you're going, well, let's see, I shoot 6 weddings a month, blah, blah, blah. I'm gonna be paying Adobe $100 a month to denoise my pictures. Apple's runs on the device.
Yeah,
If it's
this was like Chat GTP or something silly
Yeah,
like that. It wasn't even, one of these software companies. It was just I'll try to
yeah,
find that video, and if I get it, I'll send
yeah.
it to you guys. It blew me away.
Yeah,
But all that
the processing like in Google Gemini and ChatGPT, Anthropic, I don't think it has built in, but it is crazy what it can do.
Oh,
I
yeah.
mean, I've used it just for photos that I got during an event that had watermarks on it, and it was the
Oh,
type that's
yeah,
watermarked all the way across and diagonal.
yeah,
And of course, they don't want you to say remove the watermark because legally I just said improve the photo. And it it did a little, you can tell it was AI. You can still
Yeah.
tell it
yeah,
was AI, but it was the free version. I'm on the free tier. I'm not even on the paid tier. It was like, "Oh, here is a very nice phone." I'm like, "Oh, that's nice."
yeah,
So, yeah, I can, like you said, and it's improving so quick that that's one there are things like it seems like Apple's using its machine learning, which, that's something we used to call AI before large language models, to do this. Hopefully, they update it more than once a year, though. Maybe not the core 9, but it seems like every quarter, every 4 months on the outside, there's a new version of either Claude or, Gemini or ChatGPT that's like, "Oh, here's where we were before. We're really blowing your mind now."
mhm,
And every 3 months, it keeps going higher and higher, and if Apple waits a whole year to make their improvements, you'll notice a huge difference in a year.
yeah, yeah,
If they don't, and I know they're not using Gemini's models.
no,
Yeah. They're saying, "Here's our model, here's Gemini, okay, run it on Gemini and go like, Apple model, see how that looks?
yeah,
Learn from that."
yeah. They used the Google Gemini just to train their model, is
Right.
basically so the relationship is not really a direct relationship. It's just we had to pay to use the model to train our model, and
Mhm.
they're not the first ones to do it. Other companies have done that same thing. So, yeah, and that certainly could be because about every 6 weeks to 2 months, Apple updates iOS, iPadOS, macOS.
Mhm.
Currently we're on 26.5.1 or 26.5, depending on what iPhone you have. And so 26.6 will be out probably in another 2 to 3 weeks. And that would be your opportunity where, okay, we've refined a few things. And the differences may be very subtle. Occasionally, they may be a little more dramatic. It just depends how Apple's going to approach it, how they want to try to market it. you know, are they gonna have a pro level and then a consumer level? Well, the consumer level comes for free. It's in Photos. You want to pay a little bit, it'll be in Pixelmator Pro or whatever their pro app is, and it'll probably follow a similar subscription. You can denoise 100 photos for 10 bucks or something, who knows?
Mhm.
Or it might be part of that creative suite, you know?
Yeah, they would bundle so many into it. Yeah,
Yeah. So, circling back to Raw 9, kinda kinda to summarize what we've talked about with that, it's going to improve, obviously, the raw image pipeline,
yep,
but it's also going to improve JPEG and hike output because of what it's doing to the raw data of the image. So,
yeah,
I think that is also a win for who are using like, people in the Apple ecosystem, not only people who shoot photos with their iPhone, but people who develop raw images, on a
Mhm.
Mac or an iPad,
Oh, yeah.
or even a phone for that matter, that
Yeah,
get imported from other, uh,
sure.
raw-enabled devices, so, cameras, the traditional cameras, dedicated cameras. I think this is going to be a good thing,
Oh,
and
yeah.
I know, Dwight, you're still just a little bit reserved on it yet. You kinda
Well,
wanna
here's
wait and see, but
I'll give Dwight 3, well, all of you, but, I'll give you 3 things that Apple really pushes where it thinks the key advantages will be. One is preservation of fine detail, because in noise reduction, you the algorithms, your AI, they all have a hard time discerning what's actually fine detail from noise. And certain noise can be fixed pattern, and it's very easy for the algorithms to detect it and remove it because it's a fixed pattern. But most of your luminance noise is random. And so what they're saying is our new model, machine learning, AI, blah, 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 it's going to do a much better job at preserving that fine detail and not just, whacking everything, fine detail, noise. Okay, we softened it all up. And then the traditional approach is, well, sharpen the edges. And you sharpen the edges, and now you got artifacts on all your edges. Apple's saying that's not going to be it. You'll apply the noise reduction. There won't be a need or near as much need for that sharpening, over sharpening. The fine detail is still going to be there. The second is better color gradients. Like film, you don't see banding very often in film. If you did, it was usually an error in the processing. But it's real easy in JPEGs and things to, especially in a blue sky, you can see, these horizontal bands. It's one color blue and then a little different color blue, then a little different color cyan. Apple is saying the banding is gone. We're going to have way cleaner color gradients, and it'll be more homogenized, look more natural, and it's not going to have artifacts in it or false colors. And then lastly, the big bonus, not so much image quality, but on the machine, the hardware, how fast it's going to do it and how there's not a huge overhead. It's not going to cost you a lot of battery. The phone's not, or whatever, iPad, tablet isn't going to overheat and cause you big problems. So you go, geez, I'd love to do another 50 pictures, but I can cook an egg on this thing. So that isn't going to happen. And so you're going to be able to do some extremely high quality work. And it's just smooth going. The hardware is designed for it. You're not offloading everything to these big NVIDIA GPUs.
yeah. So, Dwight, what do you think? Has it got a shot?
Well, I'm gonna remain positive, I'm
Yeah.
gonna look at it, I'm in this game, so I'm gonna remain positive and just kind of reserve my
Yeah,
judgment until I see it. I did post in our private chat, I didn't I that video I was talking about earlier, the denoise AI battle,
Mhm.
and I think you guys will find that very interesting, and Dave, yeah, it was Google, Gemini that they ran it through, so
Okay.
essentially you bring a photo in there and you just say, "Denoise this,"
Mhm.
and it essentially beat every single subscription program that it compared to. So,
Yeah.
that's
yeah,
another elephant in the room, I guess.
yeah,
Mhm.
Well, I think that's a pretty good discussion on Raw 9. I I don't know how well this will resonate with our general audience because this is pretty deep and pretty technical, but I think
yeah,
it was worth talking about because in the end, the end game is better images, and I think that's what people want. I mean, you touched on it earlier, Jeff, when you said that there's been a lot of talk recently about the overprocessing of images and things like that, and I really think this is going to make that better.
Oh,
Um,
yeah.
you know,
Mhm.
if in all file formats, like, however you shoot, whether it's JPEG or RAW or ProRAW or whatever, I think this is gonna improve the image quality across the board, especially when it comes to an Apple device that can render this stuff. So, I'm looking forward to it, and
It'll be fun.
I I
Yeah.
really I think Dwight's going to be impressed. I really do. I just have a hunch.
Well, I'm looking forward to it. I'm into all this stuff, so we'll
Yeah,
give it a fair
yeah,
shot.
Yep,
yeah.
Mhm.
that's all you can do.
Yeah.
And
All
Steve
right.
just says, "Great informative discussion, guys." So, yeah, that like I said, it's a topic that's not going to be easily understood by a lot of people. I mean, I had a hard time wrapping my head around some of it, but I think it was an important discussion to have, especially since iOS 27, macOS 20, all the 27s are looming, and
Mhm.
they're the developer betas are in the wild now,
Yeah,
and I I kinda hope to s I really would like to see them put it in the developer beta,
Yeah.
before iOS 27 comes out,
I think they kinda
to
have
the
to.
general
They
public.
Yeah, but say they kinda have to for the developer
yeah,
beta because
I
they
would
want
think
the
so.
developers to use it, so I think they wanna make it where it's not just solid, like, we can use it, but anyone can throw any weird stuff at it and it's still rock solid.
Yeah.
yeah.
Because,
Have
I
you
mean,
guys
that is the theme this year of, we're not giving you a lot of new features. We're just making sure everything that comes out now works as good as it can.
Yep,
Yeah.
that's a good assessment.
Greg and Jeff, is your beta been stable enough to use as your daily driver?
Yeah,
I would say 98.5%, yeah.
Oh, that's pretty good.
Yeah,
well,
I've had a few little hiccups now and again, but, oh gosh. Okay,
it
quick story here. This is life in the beta, okay? A week ago, this past Friday, so about a week and a half ago, I had the task of taking photos for the company that I just retired from this year. They have an annual recognition night. So in that evening, it started out as the quarter century club. So if you worked there for 25 years, you were inducted into this quarter century club. And
Mm,
then they blended in the recognition night. So if you got 5 years, 10 years, 20, 30, 40 years of service, they gave you, a gift, and, they had this big dinner. Everybody was invited to go, and the recipients would get their gift and then have their picture taken, and guess who volunteered to take their pictures? This guy, who earlier in that week put the developer 1 beta of iOS 27 on his iPhone. The first group of people are up getting their gifts, and I'm getting the camera, and I just use the Apple camera, just for simplicity's sake, just to bang, 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 get the pictures done. Guess whose camera app would do nothing but show a blurry image? This guy's. And so I'm scrambling while these people are getting, that they're calling them up and they're, saying congratulations and whatnot. I'm force closing every app on that's open on this thing, and usually, like, on any given, like, as time builds on, I'd have at least 100 open, in the background, but they're sitting there dormant, but I don't force close apps. So I force close all the apps, do a hard reset, and have it up and running, and thankfully, it fixed the problem before the people
mhm,
came to get their picture taken. So that's why I never recommend you put a beta on your daily device.
yeah, yeah,
I dodged a bullet there. But so that was the biggest issue I had. Even on developer beta 2 that came out today, there is a little hiccup with the keyboard, and I was talking to Jeff about it earlier, and, it might be a third party app thing because it happened in Facebook Messenger. What the deal was the keyboard wouldn't come up. I tapped in the field to reply to somebody's comment or message or whatever, no keyboard. I don't know what I did. I think I went out of the message and back in again, and it came back up. So Excuse me, something like that. But so, a couple of little
Right,
hiccups in the beta,
right,
but
that
other
just
than
may
that,
be
it's not
Facebook
bad.
Messenger. That may be Facebook Messenger because that happens to us.
That's exactly
Yeah,
what Dwight said.
Yeah.
Yeah.
yeah, it does, yeah.
That could be the beta, that's just Facebook being Facebook.
Okay. Well,
Bank
yeah,
stuff.
but it has happened in iMessage in the first beta. Haven't seen it yet this time. So, that it was an issue. Like it's a known keyboard bug, I think.
Okay.
Um, but, never, ever, ever run a beta like this on your daily driver unless you're prepared to really fool around with it and try to get it going again. I will not be putting it on my iPad or the Macs or nothing like that. I'm not doing that this time. I did that with Tahoe on my iMac, not until the public beta though, and for the most part, it was pretty good. The
Yeah.
the betas are getting better when they come out, so but, to answer your question, Dwight, about the stability and whatnot, for the most part, it's pretty stable, but you just have to be prepared for hiccups, that's all.
Mhm.
Yeah, you can always take it off, but it basically involves wiping the iPhone.
Sure.
Yeah, yeah,
There's no simple restore process to go back to 26. So you gotta know that, and what I always tell people is, if that's the device that you do some kind of mission critical stuff on,
mhm.
whether
Oh,
it's
yeah.
whether it's your banking or medical stuff or scheduling, don't put a beta on it.
No.
Because, Murphy's Law, if it's gonna go wrong, yep, it's gonna be, "Oh,
Yeah.
today's the
Yeah,
day I gotta pay this bill." No, it isn't, because you
yeah,
can't get to your app. It ain't opening.
Yeah.
that's right. Yeah,
So,
so
I don't urge anybody. What I tell them is if you got a spare phone and you wanna play with it, go ahead. But
yeah,
myself, I wanna try the new stuff, I wanna get comfortable with it, and I've been beta testing for Apple long back when I was an employee there, and so I've
yeah,
probably got 15 years or more beta testing.
yeah, and, I've put betas on in the past. I think maybe the first time I ran a beta might have been with my 12 Pro Max.
Yeah,
I'm not sure, but
yeah,
might have been before that, but I doubt it. But,
yeah.
the first time I did it, boy, oh boy, was I scared. And it's not excuse me, it's not a device that I use for any business, it's just my personal phone, and but I tend to do it for this podcast, to
Mhm.
see if there's any features that people can look forward to and
Oh, yeah.
kinda get to know them and that sort of thing. That's pretty much why I do it, and to save these other 2 guys the grief.
Well, not only that, at least on my end, I don't have a spare phone.
Right.
I have my phone and I have my wife's phone, and she has told me multiple times, "Don't you dare touch my phone to update it. You're gonna break something. It's not gonna work." And half the
Ah.
time when
Yeah.
something doesn't work right, she'll come to me and say, "Did you upgrade my phone?" And I said, now, 1 or 2 times I said, "Yeah, Apple did it automatically." When it was, like, so far in, they said, "You know what? You're on the old version. We're upgrading your ass.
Yeah,
Mhm, yep.
Whether you want it or not, you're getting upgraded. Congratulations."
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
it'll
Oh,
happen.
well, guys, I think we'll cut it off there. Thanks to the folks who are watching live on YouTube, and we really appreciate that. If you are watching this on YouTube, don't forget to like and subscribe, share this video, especially, if anybody wants to know anything about this new RAW 9 technology. Well, it's old technology, I guess, but an updated version of it. And, I appreciate everybody and anybody that supports the show in any way, shape, or form. And when it comes out on audio, share it with your friends and whatnot. Thank you, Jeff. I
You're welcome.
really, really appreciate you coming on. We were gonna have you on for the WWDC episode, but your allergies said, uh." So, we're glad that you're feeling a little better, and Dwight, you were traveling last week, so but that's why we're back on I think, our regular schedule here.
Yeah,
So,
and, hey, thanks, Jeff, and your
You're
your Facebook group is the Florida Center for Creative Photography, correct? If people have questions.
Yeah, that's the big group, and then
Yeah,
there's the iPhone one, so,
yeah,
okay.
yeah.
I've
Yeah,
got them I'll have them in the show notes anyway,
good.
so,
Okay.
Same with
Yeah,
all
thanks
our
for your
links.
contribution. Appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Yes,
It's a
absolutely.
pleasure. Yeah.
Yeah. So,
All right.
I guess on that note, folks, thanks again for watching and listening. And I guess we'll see everybody on the next one.